So Ken, I want to start with you. You've dealt with so many CEOs who've dealt with so many big, complicated, difficult problems. Would you advise a CEO to say, well, I'll go testify if I'm the right person and I know the most about it, particularly when this is something essential to his company?
Well, that's up to the company, but I mean, I think the politics of this is it's just as likely that even if there is a technical person who's most responsible for fixing this problem, it's likely that the Congress would like to see the CEO himself there as well. So, I mean, but that's a reputational, political thing more than a substantive thing.
So, Ken, let's go to the substantive thing, as you call it. I'm going to put up a full screen that was just basically what I came up with, the various fronts of the battle right now facing Facebook. Because once again, you've dealt with the situation where you have multiple agencies, multiple challenges. But right now, the ones just off the top of my head, the FTC investigation into the possible violation of the consent decree, Facebook user and investor suits, both, possible U.S. legislation, a UK info commissioner investigation going on, possible EU action. How do you approach the situation, if you're a CEO, Ken, when you have this many problems and probably more to come?
Well, I mean, most of those items that you have on your list are governmental investigations and potential regulatory change in the way Facebook operates. So largely, I think, in a situation like this, you've got governments, both abroad and here at home, that will be investigating and perhaps imposing regulatory fines. What I don't see here yet, unlike BP, unlike 9/11, unlike the Boston Marathon bombings, I don't really see private individual compensation going to the 50 million users. I mean, they would have to demonstrate how they were harmed. Now, it's true, there may be class actions, there may be efforts to impose equitable changes in the way Facebook operates. Fair enough. But I don't think you'll see a fund like I've administered in the past where individual checks will be going to individual Facebook users.
So not individual checks, but there are reports that if there is in fact a violation of the consent decree, the penalty could rise as high as $40,000 an instance, which if you multiply times 50 million, people are talking something like $2 trillion, Ken. Has that ever been done?
No. And I think what you'll likely see, who knows, but I don't know any more than you do about this, but I think what you'll likely see is a negotiation between Facebook and more than one, perhaps, regulatory agency. Here are the fines that will be imposed, won't be $2 trillion. Here are the changes that must be made in the way Facebook operates. And I think that will likely be the focus. And of course, Congress will conduct hearings, investigation. They may impose legislation, who knows. But I think it'll be a governmental negotiation at different levels, rather than individual Facebook users expecting money in the mail.
And Jeremy, it really then comes down to, do people stop using Facebook, and does it cut into Facebook's revenue? We have a great chart here that shows Facebook's revenue outperformance from everything from U.S. nominal GDP to the S&P to its competitors. Does this fundamental story of Facebook get hit?
Well, it certainly leads to...
Hang on, Ken, 1 second. Jeremy?
It was Jeremy Kahn.
Yeah, I think it could. I think it could get hit. And particularly the thing Facebook has to deal with is the growth expectations of its own investors. And I think those investors were, looking at that revenue line to keep growing and to keep growing at a certain rate of ascent. And I think that this whole situation calls into question exactly what that slope of that line is going to look like, and therefore what Facebook shares should be worth now, which is why the stock's taken such a hit. And I think it might continue to take a hit as people get adjust to the idea that they're not going to be able to see the kind of user growth that they were expecting. They're not going to be able to see the engagement that they were expecting, and that also then affects what they can charge advertisers to advertise on the platform. I think this whole thing speaks very much to Facebook's business model and exactly how profitable it can be over at least the near to medium term.
And Ken, this also speaks to the fact that we've kind of never been here before when it comes to social media and regulation. And the question winds up being, can you help me draw a line from this kind of crisis management through to investor base as well as user base?
Well, there's always been, as was just stated, there is a remedy for investors or shareholders who have been harmed, and that is an old-fashioned American-style lawsuit. I mean, a derivative lawsuit brought by shareholders. I mean, you may see that. It all depends how long this has an impact on Facebook's overall financial growth. That remains to be seen. This is somewhat similar, I think, to Equifax, where there was a breach in data. And I didn't see Equifax creating some sort of compensation fund or anything like that. Facebook, like Equifax, has to deal with the regulators, with the possibility of shareholder investor lawsuits. But I don't think you'll see the type of fund that I designed after 9/11 or after BP or after Virginia Tech or the Boston Marathon. I don't see individual checks going to Facebook users.
Jeremy Kahn over in London, are we seeing any erosion of the Facebook base, as it were? As I understand it, if we want to withdraw our profile, it takes like 90 days to get it done. Do we have any indication whether Facebook users are responding to this? Jeremy?
We know that there's this campaign, Delete Facebook, hashtag Delete Facebook out there. It's getting a lot of attention on Twitter, a competing social network platform, of course. But I don't think we really know what percentage of Facebook's user base is actually deleting the app, is actually going to stop using Facebook. And I think it'll be a couple months until we have any indication of how many people have actually abandoned the platform. And I think it will not, I mean, they've got 2 billion users. I don't think it's going to be huge percentage of those users.
Hey, Jeremy, in timeline purposes, what happens next?
Well, Facebook's announced that they are going to make some changes to the privacy settings, particularly on the news feed, to let people know exactly who and which outside apps are getting access to their data, and supposedly to make it very easy to turn off that access if you wish. They're also going to say that if you haven't interacted with one of these apps in 3 months, that that app is no longer going to have access to your data. So that's going to happen. I would imagine that would happen very soon. I think you're going to see Facebook making this investigation into exactly what other apps out there had access to your data prior to this change in the privacy settings in 2015, and then doing these audits to see if any of them, like Cambridge Analytica and this researcher apparently, which of them abused those what they were allowed to do at the time, and taking action against those firms that did abuse this, and also notifying users to the extent they're able to tell if their data was accessed in this way. But I think that process is going to take a while, so that could take several months. And then I think we still have this drumbeat from regulators and lawmakers to get Facebook in front of hearings and to answer some of these questions. And I think you're going to see Zuckerberg in front of Congress sooner than he thinks.
So, Ken Feinberg, finally to wrap this up, you've been involved in so many of these instances, and let's talk about the corporations now, not the governments, but the corporations. And your responsibility has been basically getting compensation from people, but you've seen how companies have dealt with it. What would be your main advice to Mark Zuckerberg if he were to ask you about how they restore confidence in their brand?
I think that they will restore that confidence by being very proactive here. I think Mr. Zuckerberg started that last night. I think that you'll see the company promising to make changes. I think the company will propose changes. There will be suggestions. They may bring in some outside independent lawyer or consultant to sort of be the face of the company in terms of dealing with the various criticisms that are coming from different regulators and entities. I think you'll probably see some private class actions brought by lawyers representing the 50 million users seeking reforms. So I think the government should be very I think the company should be very proactive. And in terms of protecting its brand, it might think about retaining an individual who will sort of usher the company through these various reform initiatives and send a signal that the company means to make changes in the way it operates.